On page 79, we are supposed to decide who is correct, Alana or Jose. So it says to write down a number. So let's go ahead and write down a number, n. There's our number. And we're going to add 3 to it. And now we're going to multiply by 4. Okay, well, it looks like Alana just multiplied the n by 4. But it says to multiply by 4 to n plus 3. So that means the whole thing. So I would put parentheses around it and put my 4 out front. Okay, well, now it doesn't look like either one of these. So now let's use the distributive property to multiply that 4 into the parentheses. And we have to multiply it with both the n and the 3. So 4 times n gives us 4n, and 4 times 3 gives us 12. So it looks like Jose is right. And provide an explanation. You could say something like, have to use the distributive property. And use the distributive property to write the following expression in an equivalent form. So I know this looks very confusing up here with all these variables, but if it looks like this, a number times parentheses, a number plus a number, which is the way this looks, they want us to write it like this. So basically, we're going to show how to do the distributive property. Multiply that 3 into the parentheses to both the 5 and the 25. So that will look like 3 times 5 plus 3 times 25. And you don't have to solve it. This is just practicing what the distributive property does. And then this one, we're basically just working backwards. You know how we multiplied the 3 in to the parentheses? So it's in both of these. Okay, well here, the common number is 6. So we're going to pull that 6 out. So we're going to have 6, and then in parentheses, we'll have the 8 plus 10. All right. And again, we are not solving this. We are just practicing writing what the distributive property does. So we're taking the 9 and multiplying that into the parentheses. So we'll have 9 times 10 minus 9 times 3. And then for this one, we are going to be pulling 3 out of the parentheses. So we'll have 3 times 10 minus 4. Okay, and then it looks like jump over to page 82. And we're deciding who's correct again. So we have our number n, and it says to add 2. And then it says to multiply by 3. Okay, well, if you remember from before, we have to multiply that whole thing by 3. So when we do that, use the distributive property, we'll have 3 times n, which will be 3n, and 3 times 2, which is 6. So it looks like Brianna is correct. And for an explanation, you could say Alicia forgot to distribute the 3. All right, write down a number, n, subtract 4, and then divide by 2. Well, we have to divide the whole thing by 2. So it looks like Alicia is correct. So provide an explanation. You could say Brianna only divided the 4 by 2, or she didn't divide the whole thing by 2. Write down a number n, subtract 4, and then multiply by 7. So remember, you got to multiply the whole thing by 7. So this looks exactly like Alicia, but let's go ahead and use the distributive property to multiply that 7n. 7 times n is 7n. 7 times negative 4 is negative 28. And look at that. They are both right. And then lastly, page 84, write the next 3 terms. So going from 4 to 5, that looks like plus 1. 5 to 7, plus 2. 7 to 10 is plus 3. 10 to 14 is plus 4. So if we keep going, that's plus 5 gets to 19. And plus 6, which would be 25. And then plus 7, which would be 32. Explain your reasoning or the pattern you found. So write something about how you keep adding one more onto each term, or you keep increasing what you add on to each term. Find the value that makes each statement true. 2 times something gives us 2. All right, well, we know that 2 times 1 is 2. And then negative 2 times something gives us negative 2. That's also going to be 1. Anytime you multiply 1 with a number, you always end up with your original number, right? But now we have 2 times something equals 1. All right, well, we got to multiply to get smaller. Well, if you take 2 and cut it in half, you're going to have 1. So we can say half of 2, or 2 times 1/2 would give us 1. All right, and then it looks like we're doing almost the exact same thing down here. We have a negative 2, and we're going to 1. So we know we're going to be multiplying with a half, but this is a negative, and our answer is positive. So we'd have to multiply negative times negative to get a positive. So when you multiply a number by 1, well, what happens? 8 times 1 is 8. 463 times 1 is 463. So you always get original number. And when you multiply a number by its reciprocal, oh, there's a big word. Not a lot of people remember what a reciprocal is. For a reciprocal, you have to have a fraction. So let's talk about the fraction 3/4. And we're going to be multiplying it with its reciprocal. Reciprocal is when you take a fraction and you flip it upside down. So the denominator 4 becomes the numerator, and the numerator 3 becomes the denominator. And when we multiply it, remember, you're multiplying straight across. So 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 divided by 12 is 1. All right, well, will this work with every fraction? Well, we talked about fraction. Let's talk about whole number. So let's say I have the whole number 10. Okay, in order to find its reciprocal, we have to have a fraction. So we're going to make the 10 into a fraction. You can do that by putting a 1 under it. You can make any number into a fraction by putting a 1 under it, because 10 divided by 1 is 10. So let's multiply it by its reciprocal. So remember, you're flipping it. 1 goes on top, 10 goes on bottom. 10 times 1 is 10. 1 times 10 is 10. And 10 divided by 10 is 1. So you will, whenever you multiply a number by its reciprocal, you will always end up with 1.